about time we started looking for solutions within our continent. You'll realize that the numbers that visit Africans visiting one another is very few. You'll rather go to Europe or go to Middle East or go to Asia before you even visit a fellow African country. To make it even worse, many of us don't know their own countries. You'll realize that Nigerians know more about the rest of the world than their own country. Same as Kenya. Kenyans will know more about the rest of the world than Kenya itself. So I think it's about time we started now looking at us. And I think COVID-19, moving forward, it is allowing us to reboot and to think Africa. And Africa is our business. Thank you.
Mr. Hersey, I think you've mentioned more of a problem that Africa know already. What is the strategy? How should Africa do? What should Africa do?
I think the biggest strategy for us is to first appreciate ourselves. I think that's the strategy. And if you look at the population of Africa today, if only 5% of the population decides, you know what, we will not be traveling out of the continent, but we will travel within the continent. Personally, I've made a decision that I'll start now visiting fellow African countries. Let me tell you, the numbers that visiting African countries, the numbers will just go up. And that is what we are like. Now, the big question is, how are we going to solve that problem? One of the challenges that we face is we've never made it easy for Africans to visit one another, because when you look at first visa restrictions and airline connectivity and basically infrastructure, and I think the solution lies within airlines. And it's high time we start getting connections that if you wanted to go to West Africa, it would be very easy from East Africa and vice versa. And if you want to go to a certain African country, whether you're from North Africa, it should be easy. At the moment, that's the biggest challenge. We still have a scenario where we have to go to Europe and come back to an African country. And that's what we need to solve. And that will take us back to the Yamoussoukro Treaty, which was signed way back in 1999, ratified in 2018, and we are still yet to get off. And of course, our airlines are still struggling. And that is one of the key things that we must solve if we have to start benefiting out of Africans are visiting one another.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohamed Hersey. Mr. Arvind, over to you. What do you believe are the good strategies for Africa? And as you are giving us the strategies that Africa should adopt to benefit on tourism and still capitalize on tourism, Mr. Septi is getting ready because we'll be speaking right after you. Over to you.
Yeah, Mr. Harvin, we need to indicate by a raise of hand so that the webinar team can unmute him. All participants have been muted. Can you do that?
Mr. Harvin, please unmute your microphone.
No, you will need to raise a hand so that the webinar team can locate you. Participants are not allowed to unmute themselves so that we can have a orderly house. So, Mr. Harvin, give us a raise of hand so the webinar team can unmute you.
Is that fine?
Yeah, because we can actually see him as Mr. Harvin on the webinar.
Is it okay to unmute? They have their name, all the panelists?
Yeah, the panelists should use their real name so that we can be able to unmute
yes,
them.
I see all the panelists have their real names appearing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so Didier, can you take on the next panelist while we sort out Mr. Harvin?
Okay, Mr. Septi, can you say something? Hopefully, is your microphone unmuted?
Yes, Mr. Septi is unmuted.
Yes. Mr. Arvin, we'll come back to you. Sorry, apologies for that.
Didier, look, thank you for the opportunity first and foremost. I'm stepping in for my friend, Sisan Jonah. So I hope I will do as well as he would have done as the CEO of SA Tourism. I think there's a lot of things that we're going to be saying that are going to be, a repeat, because I think we essentially see the challenges the same way. But let me not repeat what has already been said by my colleague from Kenya. But I want to say two things. Some of the things, of course, that we're going to say are going to be location specific. So some of the things I'm going to be saying will be South Africa specific. And I think the first two things that I would like to start off with is that we, as the South African industry, I don't know if this is the situation in other parts of the continent, need to start focusing a lot more on domestic tourism. South African tourism is geared towards international tourism. And I think this is due to historical ties and perhaps because of the, people who have been there in the industry for a long period of time, who have had very strong ties with the West. And so the focus has been largely on bringing tourists from the West. It's shifting now, of course, we're focusing, in Asia and those kinds of places. But this is where traditionally we've focused as South Africa. South African tourism is built mainly on international tourism and not on domestic tourism. I think that COVID-19 is actually a wake-up call or a clarion call to us as local industry to say, it is about time that we actually activated domestic tourism. Even before COVID-19, domestic tourism was declining in South Africa. And I think that the local players really couldn't be bothered because, they were bringing all this business from abroad, from overseas. Well, now that that business is facing the challenges that we're talking about, where to next? We have a massive, a significant internal market that we need to come up with strategies to activate. And then later in my contribution, I can go into more specifics about what are some of the aspects of the things that we need to do. But that is number one. Number two, I remember a few years back sitting in a presentation that was given by MasterCard to the Gauteng tourism authorities, where they were indicating the contribution in retail terms of the offshore market to retail in South Africa. And yet South African retail, South African shopping does not see itself as playing in the tourism space at all. And I have met with colleagues from places like Nigeria, from places like Uganda and Kenya, as recently as last year, who have said to me, Septi, these are tour operators. We take a lot of people from our countries on shopping trips offshore. And they said to me, we would very much like to come and do that in South Africa because, the retail sector in South Africa is so developed. And yet, for reasons that our Kenyan colleague has already spoken to, they go mostly to places like Dubai and other places like those, right? Now, there are obviously, travel flows which have been addressed, but also the local retail industry, which is very well established, really has not awoken to the tourism opportunity, which is brought about by shopping. And I think that what we need to do as we focus on revitalizing our domestic tourism industry, we need to go beyond our boundaries as traditional tourism.
Yep.
And say, who else do we need to bring on board? Who is going to help us to open up the market and bring more people into our countries? And that applies to Kenya, that applies to every other country that's represented here. We need to stop navel gazing and look beyond our little borders and see who we can partner with in order to increase the attraction and the appeal of the destination.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Septi insisted on domestic travel. We'll come back to that. A lot of questions are coming. Captain Emmanuel, please, I hope you are busy with all those questions. And if there are specific questions, and then you have to put them out to the person whose question has been asked. We are back to Mr. Arvind.
The webinar team is on it. We have so many questions, and Mr. Arvind is unmuted now.
All right, over to you, Mr. Arvind. Strategies Africa should adopt to capitalize on tourism, on its tourism.
First of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the chance to intervene today. And I wish to all of you, fellow brothers and sisters, a very good afternoon from Mauritius.
Mr. Sam, you are next, just so that you know.
Actually, tourism is one of the major economic pillars generating 1.4 million. We generate around 1.4 million tourists every year, and the employment is around 10% of our total labor force. And actually, Mauritius has been always a very Eurocentric destination. Around 65% of the total number of tourists come from Europe. And actually, today we realize that we've been extremely dependent on Europe. Nevertheless, we have embarked on a strategy to develop other emerging markets. Very recently, I would say, around 5-6 years back, I would say. And what we can see today is that there has been definitely an upsurge from Africa, from African markets. I mean, right now, over 1.4 million tourists, around 11% or 12% would be from Africa. It is steadily growing, but I think there's much more potential. In terms of strategy, I mean, if we try to address the African markets, I would say the first thing for me, which is vital, is accessibility. As you are aware, in our business, accessibility is visibility. The day African countries become accessible, I mean, the world will hold no secret. We would be extremely competitive. And within Africa, I think we can develop this strategy. Secondly, I would say visa procedures. Visa processes are extremely tedious, are extremely difficult. And this is one of the reasons that hinders us African for visiting other countries, other fellow African countries. And what I would also, the trend right now in travel, I mean, not right now, a few years back also, I would say the trend is that more and more the traveler is looking at twinning destinations. And this could be one of the major assets that Africa should capitalize on. We've seen, for instance, the green and the blue economy. And Africa has this potential of capturing this market. Everybody is talking about twinning, about visiting. I mean, and this could be one of the major assets. As for Mauritius, it is extremely difficult for us to rely on domestic tourism. In terms of, you know how large Mauritius is, how big Mauritius is. It's a small point it's a dot in the Indian Ocean. Yeah. And within 1 hour, within 2 hours, you can just tour the whole island. And I would believe that, there are no two ways. First is accessibility. Second is easing of visa facilities. And third, I would say what we should look at is at more and more twinning of destinations, and so that we can package few countries together.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Arvind. These are very, very important and valid point. Accessibility. If we cannot access, especially we stand in a situation whereby to access some of the African countries from Africa, you fly out of Africa, then connect and back into Africa. Those kind of things. And we have experts of aviation that will have really addressed this issue, because these are the concerns that should be dealt with if we are very, very serious with our tourism as a continent, and if we want to see it going forward. And of course, accessibility could be there. It could be flights to every region of Africa. But if the visa conditions also are not made possible or easier, it's of course another issue. We do understand that. Mr. Sam, over to you. And then just after you, we'll go straight to the CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Akwesi, and the DG will be closing on this topic, specific question, but will be the first on the next question. So the DG will have double portion. Over to you, Mr. Sam.
Thank you very much, DJ, for the invite and for the interest of sharing with us all these major issue that we should share with all of Africa. I would like to take an opportunity to say to everybody that the Democratic Republic of Congo is keen to hear experience all over from Africa, because as you know, we have came out from a difficult situation of war in some part of the country. So we are building up with the new regime and the new government, some new, we are humbled to say that we need to attract more investors in the public sector and private sector to be able to come up with a good packaging of our destinations. I'm very keen to, from what my predecessors intervenant have said, Mr. Ersi and Mr. Septi, I want to focus on what Mr. Septi has said as an experience of the South African experience of the local tourism, and to be like a model for all of Africa. I mean, this is a good experience coming from Johannesburg to Cape Town. You can see that the domestic tourism is a very important one in South Africa, and as you can say also in Kenya, because everything that is happening there is well packaged. And because of the advanced, infrastructure environment on those countries, this facilitates the movement of people among the country. And those are the challenges that government needs to identify and to capture, to facilitate the integration between the private sector and the industry, because the investment needs to be first from the local ones to make sure that they package products for the locals, that we don't need to wait for foreigners. When I'm saying foreigners, I'm talking as a region and as a country, to make sure that the investment are first of all local, because you'll know that for the domestic tourists to be promoted, it must be done first by the local ones. That was the first point that I wanted to make. And the second one, I need to emphasize on the narrative. Local Africans need to be the first marketer of their destinations, because you can see that in the media, what is happening in Africa, locals' perceptions is different from others who are coming in the country. So as continent, as region, we need to make sure that the narrative of our countries are better than what is expressed in the media, because we are better marketer of our countries and our destination than anyone else. That will come back to what I've said earlier in terms of the promoting the local destination, the domestic market, to be stronger, so that, because you can see even in reality, African destinations are the most, flourishing now. We are stronger. I'm talking as a real African to say that COVID experience has shown that we are stronger in terms of defense of our immunity, our local immunity. So that will secure all the visitors from all over the world if we give a better narrative of our destination. That was my contribution, and I'm willing to see what is happening in this. The interest of this webinar is for us as a government here in the DRC to make sure that we take advantage of the experiences that will be shared here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. That's very, very interesting. We can all pick the issue of domestic travel still coming in very, very strong. And that shows how important that is. But of course, talking of Africans, it's still domestic, because Africa is our motherland. Over to you, Dr. Kwesi. What should Africa do? What are the strategies in order for Africa to capitalize on its tourism?
Thank you, Didier. And just point of correction, I'm not a doctor yet.
Oh.
Anyway.
Oh, okay. That's how it was sent to me, but it's okay.
Thanks for the compliment anyway.
All right.
One day when I grow up,
Mr. Kwesi, are you there? Seems to be having problem with connection. Should we go
Yeah, I think it must be
to the
connection
DG?
problem. Yes, let's go to the DG now.
Yes,
Mr.
we'll come
Akwesi,
back. We'll come back
connection
to
issues.
Mr. Akwesi. Now we have in the house Nigeria
Path is quite
represent.
clear. Yeah, it's very, very important looking. That's domestic and then regional. If you take Western.
Oh, he's back. Mr. Kwesi, your connection seems to be going on and off. We couldn't hear you for a minute or so. Captain, yes. Oh, okay. Mr. Kwesi, we couldn't hear you for a minute or so. It's like your connection, you was cutting, it was breaking up.
All right. Yeah, so I was saying, for us in Ghana, the path is very simple for us. We're looking domestic after COVID, and then regional. Regional in terms of the West Africa sub-region before we even look at the entire continent, because West Africa alone is a 326 or so million population. If we could get just 1% of the population traveling amongst ourselves, and so that calls for access, that calls for ease of movement. A lot of our people may not necessarily be able to fly. So in terms of infrastructure on ground, roads, connections, other means of transport is something that as a regional body, ECOWAS, and also Africa as a whole, we start looking at transport infrastructure. Then also the cost of travel. If you look at the taxes on the airline tickets, I mean, you will have airport tax, you have so many taxes. And so it makes it unaffordable for the average African to travel. And so we need to also start looking at incentives for people to want to travel. And so costs prohibition is real, and we must tackle it. The costs can also pass it on to the travelers and the visitors that are coming in. So yes, three things. One, access. Two, looking within ourselves how we can promote regional tourism. In West Africa, we started the West Africa integrated travel. We had Benin, in Togo, Nigeria, and it's something that we must continue so that we can move people across the various countries in the sub-region. Then finally, we start looking at the incentives. How can we make the hotels affordable? How can we make travel affordable to the average African? Thank you.
Mr. Kwesi, I just want to jump in there quickly because we're talking of it's kind of a recovery plan post COVID-19. Would this be something that can be done as in now, so that as countries are lifting the ban and the travel ban, Ghana will be ready for this?
Yes, we are ready already. We've been working on it. It's our path out of COVID is very clear. We have met with the industry players, the private sector who drive tourism, and the path is very clear. Domestic is number one, two, regional, and three, the sort of incentives that we want to put in place to make it affordable for people to move. Yes, you can promote, but if the people cannot afford. So for us, that is our way out. And we already are very clear in our minds that once we are back on this, we will be able to stimulate the demand that needs to be stimulated. International travel for us is not something that we are looking very much to this year, because clearly even most of the airlines coming into, let's say, Ghana have started announcing reduced flights. And so you will not get the numbers from international. The numbers have to come from regional and domestic.
Great. That's really, really good to hear. Mr. Kuka, the DG, Director General of Nigeria Tourism Development Corporation. Over to you.
Mr. DJ, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to say that the first mode is survival. And I pray everybody on this webinar survives this endemic virus. It's no longer pandemic, it's endemic, it's here to stay. Africa is also truly free. For once, everybody has a problem and nobody has the time to listen to the specific problems of Africa. So we have to look inwards for a solution. The growth of tourism in Africa must be Pan-African. It's about us, it's amongst us, it's between us. It's not going to be international arrivals. I mean, what is domestic tourism? Domestic tourism means you have a good standard of living in your country. I go to Dubai to do what? To enjoy what is local to Dubai. We haven't had one, and I have always, for the last 3 years, clamored it is to do. Now, I don't want to speak too far on broad subjects, but in 2016, we launched something in Nigeria called the Chief Program, Chiefs. And it's an acronym for the following statement: that we've got to look at the corporate governance, the laws and regulations that govern tourism today in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole, and look at the problems we have had in the past and the new problems that COVID-19 puts on the table. It's new rules for new times, for a new regime. We've also got to look at the welfare packages that go with these new rules. We've got to look at incomes and what people get out of the tourism industry by regulation. We've got to look at the human capital requirements. It has changed in every stakeholder in the ecosystem, from airlines to hotels. I mean, how do airlines now sit 3 in a row and make their money back? Will you sleep in a hotel room when you don't know where the sheets have come from? Are you taking your sheets into a hotel? The skill sets are going to be totally different. It's more selling safety and science than selling the luxury. Can you have a spa? Can you have a haircut? Can you have a massage? Are all those things possible? It's uncertainty at a level globally that we need to look at the human capital requirements very closely. There are going to be infrastructure changes. No hotel, no airline is going to be the same after COVID, or if they're going to emerge out of COVID. What are the filtration systems in hotels? What are the filtration systems on airlines? Are they COVID compliant? We've got to look at events. Look at us now. We are all over the continent and we are speaking as if we're all in one room. The digital frontier needs to be further looked into. The disruptive technologies that need to be brought to bear. Uber, Airbnb is no longer good enough. We need to even go deeper than that now to bring ourselves out of this. I said the growth of this is Africa for Africans, it's Pan-African. Then funding. Nobody has funding for Africa from anywhere right now. That is my attitude. I believe that in a country of 200 million people, 500 billion GDP in 1 million square meters of Africa, I think there's enough money in Nigeria for Nigerians to invest. And in even Africa as a whole, if you have a good airline and you know how to do the airline business, come, let's talk.
Yep.
Maybe because we don't have an airline, we can find common ground that we can develop something. It is easier for us to grow something brand new today with COVID compliant regulations than to try and repair something old that is saturated with memories of, it used to cost me $500. Why should it cost me $2,000 today? Well, that is the make as well. Sustainability is important. And that is where I think but how do we sustain it? I am extremely happy that Nigerians cannot buy international tickets to go anywhere. I'm sorry I have to say this, but everybody here from every other country must be happy that South Africans are spending in South Africa on made in South Africa products. So there's a selfish side to it as well. Now, on a positive note, I must say something. this is an occasion for us to finally get it right. This is an occasion for us to build African tourism. This is an occasion for us to visit each other. We don't know each other. In Nigeria, our slogan is Tour Nigeria, because Nigerians don't know Nigeria. We're encouraging Nigerians to tour Nigeria. Now that Nigerians can't go anywhere, they have to tour Nigeria. If you want a holiday, Nigeria is your cheapest holiday as a Nigerian. You don't have to get a visa. You don't need to change to roam your phone. You don't need foreign exchange. You probably speak the language. Stay at home and let us build this thing together. I'm sorry, everybody seems to be laughing, but these are painful. I see my director from Johnson.
That is true. You're talking the real truth.
This is a fantastic. I look at the picture of Nigerian Airways. We don't have Nigerian Airways. But this could be the time to build Nigerian Airways, because so many airlines have gone down. There's so many pilots, aircraft not doing anything. This is the cheapest time for us to build an airline. So the downside is there, but the upside, I think we need to focus on, and the uncertainty that stands now, please, our initial responsibility is survival. After survival, we will heal the industry. We will heal the businesses, we will heal the continent, but we will take such vital lessons from this episode that yes, we can. Africa can, correct. And the growth of Pan-African tourism, I think, rests in our hands. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. And another important thing.
That was fantastic.
That was very fantastic. I like it. Especially, I like what the DG said, that come, let's talk. Africans need to talk. You want to invest in tourism, come, let's talk.
Yeah, that's the reason why we put this webinar together.
Yes, you will get the guidance of where to do, what to do, and where to do it. Very, very important. Another thing that came up, the issue of affordability, the cost. In fact, this was going to come as a question. Like I said, in the same order, we will start now from the DG going backwards. But before that, for example, we have products, okay? Being in the industry, being all over Africa, we have products. I can tell you, for example, you get to Okavango in the Delta in Botswana, there are lodges that can cost you anything between 4,500 and 8,000 per night, not in rands, not in Naira, in dollars. That is in USD, 8,000 USD per night. Well, there were many like this in different places. We have a place called, okay, now I want to mention the name. That name, I guess their spirit is so strong. The name, I just disappeared.
You have to be careful.
It's just here next to the Kruger National Park. The cost of the lodges there, a night you will easily pay 35,000 rand up to 40, even more, because the STO rate ranges something like 17,000. So that is special to operator. You can guess the rack rate. And I'm in Kenya, there are places like that. So such products, are they really for African? And should we promote Africa? What will happen to such product? And of course, in Mauritius, where I've been, if not for COVID-19, every year I'm there about 3 or 4 times a year. You also have similar products that are just extremely, it's like in Africa, we have products that are aligned, not easy to package for Africans, not because Africans don't have money, but in the industry, it even doesn't even sell easily and quickly. So how do we deal with such product? Here I will have to be pushing not more than 2 minutes with your response. DG, over to you.
Okay, first of all, I will try my best to break your 2 minutes response time. I think your market now is a close market. It's your neighbor. Your market is a numbers game. It's high volume, low value. You've got to make people believe in the fact that they can leave home safely and go on holiday. Yes, eventually products that cost $4,000 or $5,000 will come online. But if you make those your priority right now, really what you're going to be selling is safety. It's clean, sanitized, disinfected rooms. Because what else can you sell? Getting there, let's not even look at the product, let's look at getting there. Your airport experience has to undergo such expensive changes. Queuing up, checking in, going through security, departure gates, queuing to get onto the airline. What is the structure within the airline? Disembarking, picking up your luggage, coming out. What are the embassies like? You have such major fundamental changes that you must address before you even go to the product. But on the issue of the product, cheap, cheerful, affordable, and let it be a numbers game. Let people be able to build the confidence again to get up and get out of the country to Ghana, to Republic of Benin, etc., close neighbors. And that's I believe that's the step we're going to go through. Are you going to go to America tomorrow even if I gave you a free ticket in a $5,000 room? Probably not. I think I've got 2 minutes.
Great. Mr. Akwasi, Ghana Tourism Authority CEO, tell us, I liked what you said. It's like Ghana is focusing more on domestic tourism, not really international, not because you don't need it. Of course you do. But it's like Ghana has put in more effort towards domestic tourism. But for such issues, products that are extremely expensive, and we see that it's more reserved to international market. And in this case, when I'm talking of international, I'm referring outside African continent. What do you think should be done about this?
Thank you, Didier. And I think in my earlier submission, I did indicate that we need a lot of incentives for the sector to be able to get us to the pricing that will bring in the volumes now. Currently, we need to restore confidence. Like Mr. Falarin said, you have a situation where people don't feel confident enough now sitting in planes, even stay in hotel rooms. So how do you then get them to move? For them to see other people do it. And the other people who can do it are the people who may be making day trips, who be moving around just a day and coming back. And those are the domestic travelers. And for them, there is a way that we can provide incentives. So companies providing incentives, travels to staff. We as the tourism authority are going to be working very closely with corporate Ghana to promote projects, what we call the See Ghana, Eat Ghana, Wear Ghana, and Feel Ghana. It's a campaign that targets domestic tourism. And I think across Africa is something that we all need to look at, because immediately after COVID, it will be difficult to get the numbers moving across. But once people do the domestic trips, then they start building their confidence, and then to move regional, and then eventually African, and then global. So that is our strategy going forward. And I believe in terms of pricing, there has to be a lot of incentives to the private sector, tax cuts, rebates that will let them also reduce their pricing to attract the travelers.
That's great. Thank you so much for that contribution. Mr. Sam, Africans with high cost of establishment, how do we, because the more number we need, definitely it's like it's called economies of scale. The more numbers we need kind of the more demand, the high the cost goes up. We need to break even, in terms of the demand, or to attract people to consume local product, domestic product. It must also be affordable. What should the sector do?
Yeah, the main thing to answer clearly in that question is the local situation must, as I've said earlier about the narrative of the country. Once you have passed that
DJ seems to be breaking up your connection. DJ's question.
Hello, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Once you have passed the narrative, the positive narrative of the country, then you come to the environment now. So you need to attract people, as some of the speakers have said earlier, to build up local attractive conditions, which comes to infrastructures. You need to package products that will will meet the people's need. As African, we have a lot of cultural story that we need to promote locally. The noises are just breaking up.
We can hear you.
Fine, can hear you.
That would be then the responsibility of the local government with industry in place, the private sector, as I was saying, to package a product that will meet people's needs. And as African, we just need, we cannot be in Africa and promote hotels. Like, I mean, at the standard, I've seen the Eco Lodge in Rwanda, which is something very, I mean, impressive, where in the nature we have accommodation that is proper to Africa's living. And that is something that I think those packages must consider the richness of our cultures and our fauna and flora, as I was saying. That's my point that I can express on that one.
Wow, that's great. Quite interesting. Yes, we should have as Africa some type of accommodations or establishment that suits the African style, and this should also allow everyone to be able to move, to be able to enjoy the product. So over to you, Mr. Mohamed Hersi. Just after you is going to be Mr. Arvind before Mr. Septi could also tell us what do we do with this establishment considered as this is for international travelers only because of the cost.
Okay, Didier, this is great and I'm enjoying it. But allow me just to share a few statistics very quickly.
Yeah.
The last stats that were given by UNWTO, 41% of Africans travel to Europe, and only 26% travel within Africa. And then another 20% went to Middle East and specifically, Dubai and the environment.
Yep.
And then the issue that was brought up of accessibility. We have the airline aspect and then we have the visa aspect. Now, they gave a comparison of 2009 and 2019. Unfortunately, you'll realize the difference between those 10 years is not much. When you look at, for instance, West Africa is the best part of Africa that has allowed fellow Africans to travel within. And that comes to almost 47%. When you come to East Africa, we are hardly 17% allowing our own fellow Africans to visit us. Yeah. Then you ask yourself, but why? Then Central Africa is even worse at 10%. I think first thing first we need to do, yes, airlines is a challenge, but the easiest thing that we can do amongst ourselves is to open our borders.
Yep.
I have no idea why we decide to close borders and we're making it so difficult for Africans to visit one another. Now, the issue of domestic tourism has come up, and I think you can borrow an example from Kenya. COVID-19 has given us a new challenge globally and everyone. But for Kenya, we've had a special problem over the years, the last, 10 years, 15 years, insecurity. Every now and then we've had terrorism attacks. And what happens? It's followed by non-essential travel advisory on the country. Now, suddenly no Europeans can visit you and everybody is worried. We decided to make a very strong campaign dubbed Tembea Kenya, which means Tour Kenya, just the way our brothers and sisters in Ghana are now trying to do in Ghana and also Nigeria. So I would like to report, last year, the numbers, 56% of tourists in Kenya were domestic tourists that occupied our hotel rooms. And I think that is great because we only ended up with around 45%. But at the moment, for us, it's a little bit easy to continue playing the domestic numbers because it's not new to them. And Kenyans never used to consider traveling to be a good thing. Many consider it a waste of money. You might as well go back to the rural village and continue farming. And that's what people consider to be a holiday. But suddenly they're told, look here, you need to relax. You need to enjoy yourself. You need to enjoy your money. How many years have you got on this world at the end of the day? See the world, see your country. And let me tell you, Didi and everyone, the results have been amazing. And also East Africa, we decided to join hands. Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, we have a single visa. And hopefully our brothers and sisters in Tanzania, if they joined us, what will happen is that anybody coming to this part of the world is able to visit all these other countries. And I think The key thing is for us to open up our borders and make it easy for everyone to visit one another. When it comes to airlines, we have a very successful airline, Ethiopian Airlines, which is our own in Africa, which is the oldest airline on the continent. Many of us don't know that Ethiopian Airlines is actually older than Lufthansa, is older than British Airways. Before those guys even thought of putting an airline together, our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia were already doing it. Kenya Airways is another one, equally a good airline. We are having troubles, yes, but we can get out of it. South African Airlines, similarly. So I think we're not starting from scratch. We've got something to work on. And I believe when we come together as an African continent, there's a lot that we can do. On our numbers, instead of going out, let's start looking inwards. And it's high time. And my brother from Nigeria clearly said it. Suddenly, you cannot go to Europe. No, Europe doesn't want you. You better stay here.
Thank you.
So we might as well make Africa to work. Thank you.
We have to make
thank
it
you
work.
so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Hersey. That was very insightful. Yes.
We have nowhere else to go to.
we are in a situation, you know, there is a proverb, an African proverb, which says, there is the stick you are holding that kills the snake. When you have a stick, you don't first leave it, go to look for a bigger one. You use what you have. We now have our own country. We now have our own Africa. We just have to enjoy it. Mr. Arvind, and in the meantime, Captain Emmanuel, please, I hope you have questions ready, because I want us to be
so many questions.
Those questions, so our panelists will help us into this.
Yes, Didier, we have so many questions already. Actually, the first question I have is actually for Mr. Mohammed. So I would like you to round up with the questions, and then we quickly go and pick some questions. I have some pretty good questions to our DG,
okay.
the LTDC DG. So we have a full house of questions.
Oh, wow. So we have Mr. Arvind, and then after Mr. Arvind is going to be Mr. Septi on this matter of how do we make cost effective for African. Yes, Corona. We can't go to Dubai, and we don't even want people to go there. We want them to consume Africa, to enjoy Africa. But again, it should be within a reasonable price. What do you say about it? Mr. Arvind?
Mr. Arvind, over to you.
Okay. Right now, I believe the main criteria which would determine travel is the consolidation of our sanitary protocols. You know, right now, marketing our pristine beaches, beautiful landscape won't be enough. The universal language has to change. And our strategies have to be revamped. Tourism is going to be more and more experimental, authentic, with a lot of safety and security norms, which will come in the head of the traveler to reassure them. That's where Africa has a trump card to play. Because as mentioned earlier, I mean, we are an example. Africa has been an example in containing COVID. And actually, to be quite realistic, to answer your question, I don't think that for destinations like Africa, there would definitely be a price war ahead of us. It's very natural. All countries will react, all continents will react the same way. And there would be, with the fact that we will have social distancing at the airport, in the airplanes, be it security sanitary norms at hotels or accommodations, in taxis, everywhere. And if we are not careful, it's going to be dramatic for the industry. Point is, what I wish to convey today is that if there's something that we shouldn't indulge in is not to go into a price war among us.
Great. And Africa sent questions. These questions are actually not coming from me. They are from Africa. Not to answer now, but it will be answered before the end of this webinar. Africa wrote this. The EU commissioner spoke in terms of the summer holiday and urged all the country members not to block their borders to the other members. Now, the question was not about the AU. The question was, when it comes to tourism, the AU is speaking as a bloc. Can Africa speak as a bloc post-COVID-19? What do we do as a country? Kenya doesn't just say now travel to Kenya. Well, if Uganda is closed, Tanzania closed, Rwanda closed, then Ethiopia closed, then we sit in a situation whereby you don't know if you are the one who locked the people outside or they actually lock you inside. So Africa, can Africa speak one language when it comes to travel? We have you here, decision makers of the travel industry. Can you speak together? Like I said, not to be answered now, but we'll come back to this question. Mr. Septi, we were still sitting with the question of some African products in Africa, but strictly considered for international consumers because of course, the cost. What do you have to say about this?
My brother Didier, on that question, I take a very simple view. Those who are happy to keep their high prices can stay with them, and they will have to wait until the rest of the world opens. And that's entirely their decision. I'm not even going to bother about that. You know, if they want to wait for 2 years before they see the first tourists come in, that's entirely their decision. But I want to make 2 points on that issue. I think we need to look at this question from both a supply and a demand, perspective. On the supply perspective, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot in South Africa, and I think it would apply to other African countries as well, I don't know how many, is the important issue of product diversity. We live in a very beautiful continent, but what you find we do time and time again is to promote the same products without any new products coming on stream. And I think we've become very lazy in terms of thinking. So I think product development is going to be very, very crucial. We need to look around our countries and say, what new experiences can we bring on board that we have not brought on board? Because we've been selling beauty, we've been selling nature, animals, the sea and that kind of stuff. I mean, we need to look at our culture. We need to look at our rural areas. We need to look at our community. We need to look at the gems that are in there. We need to look at our histories that we can tell through tourism. I think, sitting in South Africa, there is just so much potential. We need to look at our industries, right? Last year, I attended a conference in Europe, in Berlin, where they were discussing industrial tourism. We need to open our eyes and say, what is it that we can actually package into experiences that we have not done so because we've been so lazily selling what we've always sold for decades on end. That's number one. Number two, I think on the demand side, as has been said by my colleagues, our people are too ready to hop on an aeroplane and go out of the country. And I agree with my brother from Nigeria. Thank God we can't do it now. So we need to then educate our people about our own countries and the opportunities that they offer to travel. There's so much we can offer, but our people don't know about their own country. So we need massive educational campaigns to educate people about what they can see in their own countries. My last point on this is to say, I, representing small businesses, see a fantastic opportunity for small businesses to take the lead in both these issues. They are the ones who must package local community experiences in the rural areas. They are the ones who must lead the campaign. But if our small businesses are also going to price themselves like the big players who are focusing on the international market and not on the domestic market, well, the opportunity is going to pass right below their noses. So the conversation that we're having with small businesses is, folks, forget about following the big players who are pricing for the international market. Of course, we want you to make money. We want you to be sustainable. But because you carry lower overheads compared to the big players, review your pricing and bring new products to the market. And that is where our focus is going to be. Because as we say, the game for the near future is domestic tourism. And I think the opportunities are ripe for the picking if we as the players in our domestic markets are ready for a mindset shift to look at new opportunities and to do things differently. I think the opportunities are there.
Wow. Yes. As we we all notice, we really learning a lot from the industry experts, and every input is highly considered. And we really hope that we as Africans will not just listen, but put this into practice and also implement this in order, because this, we're talking of post-COVID, we're not just talking of tourism anyhow. We want our tourism to get back on track. And of course, the other next question that will come would be, on your view, do you think Africa is ready to travel again within Africa? Let's first leave outside world apart. Are we ready to travel? Was it necessary to block the whole country rather than some cities in Africa? Well, like I said, lots and lots of questions. Captain Emmanuel, you have many questions there. Let's not upset our audience. Please go through the questions you have there, maybe more than one, so that we can buy time into this.
Okay, thank you very much, Didier. It's been a very wonderful session here today. And we have so many questions on board right now, to the extent that if you want to take all the questions, definitely we are not going to actually go home here. But I have this question for Mr. Mohammed, okay, and actually the first question on the platform. So, Mr. Mohammed, are you ready?
He's always been ready.
All right. So this question is from Melis Itia, and it says, Mr. Messi, would Kenya consider LC? All right.
Yes, LC, yeah.
Thank you. Would Kenya consider having preferential rates in terms of hotel prices and tours and safari to nationals of Africa? Take note of that, to nationals of Africa. Preferential rates to nationals of Africa, such as member states of COMESA. For South African National Park, do you have special rates for nationals from the SADC countries? And then it says that talking about shopping trips, maybe airlines could encourage providing extra baggage allowance. So I think that question is specifically to you. Are you going to consider preferential rates going forward? Thank you, Mr. S. You have the floor.
I think to answer that question, we already have a deal for the East Africans to begin with. And I did point out earlier that we even have a single visa between Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and hopefully one of these fine days also Tanzania. And then we have a special pricing for our neighbors immediate, like Ethiopia. We consider them to be East Africans. So our dream is to extend that and have one rate, for the whole of Africa, so that we're able to enjoy, better rates, including park fees. That is already in place. However, we can make it better. And I think the biggest impediment that has been coming up when you deal with the product is the cost aspect. Cost. Firstly, before I start pointing a finger at the government, normally we like blaming someone else. And it said, when you point a finger, you've got 4 others pointing at you. Yep. All right. So, and I think my Nigerian brother has clearly said it, and also Septi, you covered it. You said, can we lower our grid as owners of these products? Because we are too expensive. We can still do business and make a decent profit and then push numbers, and we can remain in business. And Septi has made it clear that if you continue with the same mindset, you'll be waiting for the next 2 years. And that's not a myth, that's a fact. That's what's going to happen. So we need to rejig our costing so that we are affordable without dropping our standards and make ourselves available for the African continent. And I believe that we can do. Now, for us to achieve that also, now African government also have to make it easy for the product to be priced right, because African governments will love taxing things that have not even been made yet. It's said you cannot tax yourself to prosperity. How can you tax something that doesn't exist? Why don't you make it work? If the demand is so much and everybody's in love with your product, then you can say, hey, wait a minute, I need to control these numbers now. How do you control it? You start lifting your price. You start, increasing the level of taxes. You've got nothing and you're busy charging a higher rate. Look at the visa aspect. Why are you so keen to charge $70 visa between countries? Make it affordable. When you make it affordable, instead of somebody spending $70 on the visa, you're looking at somebody spending $1,000 on the destination. We need to make it easy, and we must make it affordable. And if it was my dream, I'll say this: African countries should have no visa charges between one another.
Absolutely.
And if anything, there should be visas on arrival. Europe is busy stopping people going to their countries because they have the welfare system. You tell me, when you come to an African country, which welfare system is in place? You still have to work hard for yourself. So let's not make it difficult. Let's make it easy for people to travel within among ourselves. And I think to answer that question, yes, we've started, but we are not there yet. Even to make it better, we should have one price for the entire African continent as a special price that other parts of the world will not be able to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. The next question here is to my panelist from Mauritius, Mr. Harvey. And this question is from one of my very distinguished panelists in the previous editions of this webinar. In case you are not aware, this webinar is actually the 7th edition on this aviation, tourism, and hospitality post-COVID-19 recovery webinar. And Mr. Menon has been our panelist, and this question is specifically for Mauritius. So I hope, Mr. Harvey, you're ready. It says, on the issue of Africans that they have in buying packages to Mauritius, how do we solve the issue of the payment process? Hotels in Mauritius require deposits, and some African clients find it difficult to do bank transfers due to forest restrictions. So, Mr. Harvey, Mr. Menon is asking, how do we solve this issue? Because Mauritius is actually on our first destination point of call at TBS. We discussed this earlier. So, Mr. Harvey, what's your response?
I think the payment process has eased a lot, actually. And I know Menon very well. I mean, representing South African Airways in Mauritius, and the issue has never come to us that they have been facing difficulties in terms of deposits. No, but point is, actually, most of the business in Mauritius, like hotel business, is tour operator driven. Mauritius is very tour operator orientated, so most of the tour operators, obviously, as wholesalers, they would require a certain level of confidence, and they would be charging. They would be addressing the prepayment issues, and it's not only for the African market. It's all over the whole of the tourism in Mauritius, actually. And yes, there's this difficulty, but I think this is easing down a lot.
All right. Thank you very much. My next question goes to my boss, the DG at NTDC, Sir Folorunsho Koka. And this person is asking a very pertinent question. Okay, and this response will go a long way. Mr. Aaron Monetsi is the one asking this question, and he said, well said, DG. Yeah, Mr. Aaron is very popular with us in the TBS webinar. So I'm so happy today that we have distinguished panelists who are very capable, and then we have powerful participants, well-respected participants. So this question is very straight and very direct. Well said, the DG of NTDC. May I inquire as to how much your Minister of Tourism, Minister of Aviation, and the Minister responsible for immigration, how much are they aligned to your views on this webinar about tourism in Nigeria? DG, you have the floor, sir. Sir, can we have you?
Yeah, it looks like
he's here.
Connection is not great there.
The Minister for Aviation is the Minister for Aviation. Vice Minister, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, is the Minister for Tourism, Arts.
So since we're
Captain,
having
should we
issues,
take somebody else while
yes,
the DJ is checking the connection, because
yes, we're having issues
and
with
the
the
time
DJ's
is
connection.
just flying.
Exactly.
Ideally we left with less than 30 minutes until we close the session. So
Sorry, DG, we are not hearing you, so we're going to take the next question, and I'd like to take another question. This is very, very important, although Mr. Hesse has actually mentioned this, but this panelist is asking that concerning the issue of obtaining visa for some African countries. A lot of African countries make it difficult. A good example that Africa should borrow from is the UAE system, which is visa insurance electronically. How do Africa resolve this issue concerning ease of obtaining visa? And this question is not particularly any panelist. I think, Didier, who should we ask to take that question on ease of obtaining visa?
I think every panelist should share their visions. Okay, we agree already. I guess Mr. Hersey said it earlier. If it was for him, when we vote him the president of Africa, he will remove visa because he made it easier. That
yes, he has said Africa should have no restriction.
For him, Africa shouldn't have any restriction. And then again, we desire so much. Okay, now. My field of action is more Africa. I can tell you that one of the difficulties I face is Africa. But to countries that have opened up, countries like Kenya, we even suggest, like, why don't we do like Kenya? Visa, but on arrival, we pay. Get you a record, fill in the form, get scanned, record, and it's a step towards the good thing, you know, rather than but Europe, see what Europe does. We're not mentioning Europe because we want to go there. But see what Europe does. They ask for visa. But they don't give you a week. They don't give you for a month. They give you 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, multiple entry. So that you keep going. And just before this pandemic, the COVID-19, there was a circular that went around that Dubai is now giving 5 years tourism visa. I'm sure we all saw that. So why do we know? The question, Captain, I think let's formulate the question differently. Africa, we know the challenges. Why are we stuck? Why nothing is being done? Because we can't be in a situation where we're repeating the same problems that we already know. Problems have been identified, such as the visa issue. Now, if we really need to maximize and capitalize on the post-COVID, let African consume Africa and travel within Africa, something needs to be done. Do we maybe want to say where is the problem, what's holding it? So we know, because we will have to share also on this platform countries where you can get either visa on arrival or where there's no visa at all for Africans, so that Africans can travel, can continue traveling. Okay, over to you, panelists. We start with Mr. Sam. Would you tell us why Africa is stuck with the visa issue? What do you think is the problem?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think to shorten the answer, I can just say this is a political will.
Yeah, 2 minutes for the response.
Yes. Africa is facing so many issues and challenges about security and global interest that we need to have politicians and political actors who have the real will to facilitate those integrations. That I think for me is the straight answer to that question. And the second answer for me would be the market needs to enforce those laws to be in place. The consumers will affect the political decision. has the marketing require those administrative facilitations. So for me, that I can answer about with that. It's simply because all the rest we just follow on that path, and the main thing would be the political will. That's my answer on that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Septi. I saw you shaking your head as well. What do you
Yeah.
have to say? You second Mr. Sam Mayaka, right?
Brother, Sam has hit the nail on the head. It is not the main thing. It is the thing. I remember in 2014, I was at a conference, a tourism conference in Rwanda, Kigali, and there was a panel of ministers from different countries, tourism ministers, talking about, a variety of issues to open up their domestic markets. And each one after the other, kept saying, we need to. And then I got so fed up, I stood up and I said, but you are ministers. I mean, it's your job. I mean, when you come here in platforms like this and keep telling us that you need to, if you know you need to do it, why are you not doing it? Because that's your job. That's why you are there. So I think that's one issue. But I think that, what is going to move things, and I don't know how long it's going to take, is that we also in the private sector, in industry, need to come up with a unified voice to pressurize our governments into this situation. Last year, we did a major conference, over 1,000 delegates. All our Nigerian delegates got their visas on the last day of the conference. Yep. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And as Sam says, it's political will. But I think that we need to rise as industry as well, across the continent, and say to our political leadership, enough is enough. They need to get on with the job because they really are destroying tourism. But if we're going to approach it on a country by country basis, it's going to take us a long time. So I think we also need to look inside our own house as industry and say, how do we join and unify our voice across the continent and shout so loud to these politicians that they absolutely have nowhere to hide, but to deal with the issue, because we know the issue. They just don't want to move. We should not allow them any further space not to move.
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, it is a political will. I don't know if Mr. Arvin will talk about this already.
Maybe I'd like to add on that.
All Africans get free visa into Mauritius. So it's like pretty much Mauritius is sorted. We pretty much cool with Mauritius. And then Ghana is visa on arrival to all Africans. Kenya is visa on arrival as
yes.
well.
Didier, don't forget, sorry to interrupt, Nigeria also has a current visa policy. I hope that the DG will be able to also mention this. We are also opening up visa-free for all African countries.
Visa-free or visa on arrival?
Visa on arrival.
I heard it. Yes, not free. It's on arrival.
So,
yes.
And I want us to clarify, Didier. We need to clarify.
Yes,
what's our conclusion? What's
yes.
our conclusion on this webinar? Should Africa go visa-free for all African countries or visa on arrival? Because we need to have a unified visa system. Are we doing visa-free or visa on arrival? Mauritius is visa-free. Can all of Africa take a cue from Mauritius?
Mr. Sam said something. He started by saying political will, which means that everything sits with the word political. That everything sits in there, within that word. So what I would say, everything is locked into that word.
Can we bring the DG up on this issue?
Yes, I want to bring the DG up, but I want to pass the message to Mr. Sam as well, because he needs to tell the Minister of Tourism in order to see people coming to explore and discover this geological scandal land in the middle of Africa, which is called the DRC. The access should be made easier because it's kind of still an issue to get a visa to the DRC, we have to say. DG, we are back to you, sir. First, we want to clarify here. visa, is it now free to all Africans, or it's payable on arrival into Nigeria?
It's visa on arrival. And anybody that goes down the no visa, anybody can go and come in with your terrorism issues, with your pandemic issues, with contact tracing. You're looking for trouble. You must capture data. That data has a minimum cost to process. So visa on arrival simply means you arrive in my country with your passport, having all your credentials. I know where you're going to stay. I can trace you. And there's a fee for it. Make the fee minimal, yes. But visa on arrival, we have here for all Africans, and I subscribe to. Zero visa, I don't think is a good idea. That's on the response to the visa one. Before I lost a volume, somebody asked a question, which I answered in the chat, that if the ministers for aviation and my supervising minister were aligned to my thinking.
Exactly, sir.
I think so, but I think they will probably be the best people to answer that question. So if the individual who asks the question gets the opportunity, please ask them directly. But I think we're pretty much on the same page. Access to Nigeria has never been this simple. If you look at what you go through as an African to get a US visa or a UK visa or an EU visa, and you look at what you go through to get a Kenyan or Ghanaian or Mauritius, we're not doing too badly. Let's stop knocking ourselves. The European and American countries, and we get their visas. We queue, we take a bank statement. Kenyan visa. How difficult is it to get a Kenyan visa? Free, visa free, no. Visa on arrival with a token payment. Me from going to Ghana. I mean, we already have a common passport, I think, with Ghana, the EU, the AU passport, which means I can arrive there and they just stamp my passport and I go through. So I think we've really overcome this. This visa issue really isn't such a stopping point for where we are now.
Well, so according to the DG, visa should be on arrival, but not free. But we've seen also countries like Rwanda implementing visa-free to all Africans. And then on the same occasion, we also like to extend the greetings to Mr. Davison Mugisha, who's in the house all the way from Kigali in Rwanda. Thank you so much for joining us. Pass our greetings to Rwanda. And then next time, we'll have Rwanda in the house as well. So time is really, really pressing.
Yes,
Captain, should we come to the questions that were thrown? Because this seems to be the main question.
I'll actually like us to pick up on a particular question that we've left out from the beginning of the webinar.
Yes.
And if you remember, this webinar is focused on African governments and the single African air travel market. And I have a participant who is asking a particular question in that area. What is happening to the Open Skies Agreement in Africa? The participant here says that Africa suspects Africa. Why do we suspect each other? So I want all our panelists to the DG has said that this is the best time to have Nigerian Airways, all right? But then we have other African carriers doing very fine, okay? I would love us to have Nigerian Airways at this time to be the best. But even if we have an African Airways now, a Nigerian Airways now, what is going to happen since we don't have the Open Skies Agreement being implemented? Nigeria, for one, and some other countries has already signed that Yamoussoukro decision. So I think our panelists, maybe one or two of them, should weigh in on the issue of the Open Skies Agreement. Because it's one thing to have visa on arrival, but what about the fact that Africa is the most expensive place to go by flight? Why is it cheaper to go to Dubai than to go from Nigeria to Zimbabwe? Why do I have to first of us go to Europe before I come to Zimbabwe? I think we should address this issue before our time runs out. Didi,
okay.
Who should we ask to take on this question?
I think we should throw this to the panelists. Let's have two views on the panelists. who want to answer this question that's been asked by Africa. Why is it easier to go to Dubai than traveling from South Africa here? I would say going to Mali. It's a mission. You don't even know how to get there. You have to
don't
go
even know how to get there.
somewhere, then connect there. From Nigeria to Zimbabwe, you have to find your ways, maybe via Dubai or So yes, the DG is ready to speak to us on this.
And I think Mr. Kwesi is also raising his hand. So maybe
yes. We get the two of them.
Before I go down any great conspiracy theory, I'll just ask you, why is there no direct flight from the Caribbean to Africa?
Why is not issue?
Where we have such a huge density and concentration of our genetic brothers, there's no direct flight. So why is there also no direct flight within our continent? The parallel costs. Why does it cost so much? As I said, I don't want to go into conspiracy theories of collusion, of price fixing, of taxation, but because there's some people from the airline industry here, but they are the ones that need to address this, because you have 100-year-old airlines that will die. I mean, we all know the list of airlines that are in trouble already. Even the airline that got a bailout of $9 billion, Lufthansa, is being sued by another airline for getting that bailout. So it's a mess, but they have to come up with solutions to fix it. The hoteliers here have to come up with the solutions to fix it. We can regulate, we can have this discussion, but this is the time for self-help. Nobody's coming to help you. Governments cannot afford to throw the kind of monies we're expecting from governments to fix your business, to fix you. They can change the rules, they can reduce the taxation. But the ultimate solution lies with you, the airlines. It's cheaper for me to go from Lagos to Dubai to London than from Lagos to London direct. Somebody tell me why.
That is the why we want to know, DG.
So the DG himself is interested in...
Do you want to come in? Maybe you have the why.
No, I think the why is that we have to stimulate demand. That is something that we need to do. The reason why no carrier will fly from, let's say, Accra to Kingston direct is how many people are going to be on that flight. And so the commerce does not allow that. But if we stimulate demand and people see that people are traveling among Africa, within the continent that we are moving. I mean, if you put a flight from here to Lagos, people fly. And so there's always that demand-driven decision-making by operators. And so we as regulators, marketers, we need to see how we can stimulate demand so that there's enough passengers for airlines to carry them. Other than that, the airlines will come, we can regulate that there has to be a flight from Accra to whatever it is, and you will have empty seats. And then the commerce will take the front seats, and then will say, let's cancel the flight. So I think we need to start seeing how we can stimulate demand. And if we can start thinking also about Africa, I know that is a bit of an ambition that may not happen soon, but if there's cheaper way for people to travel, let's face it, the average African does not earn that much. Tax incentives for the airlines to stimulate demand, and three, make it easy for people to travel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are really pressed by time, but we cannot leave. This was the main questions, which we'd also wanted to be part of your closing remarks.
And
is
mind
Africa,
you, hold on, DJ.
Yeah.
We have
Captain,
some
we
audience.
Have time.
I understand, DJ, but we have audience on YouTube. This webinar is streaming live on YouTube. And our YouTube audience, my webinar team just contacted me and said, there is a question currently ongoing, a discussion on YouTube about why do African media promote negative news about African tourism? What should we do? Do the governments of Africa, should they partner with Africa and the foreign and also African media? There's a lot of negativity. It's a very robust conversation going on the YouTube live chat, and I think our panelists should weigh in on this. African media promotes negative news about African tourism. Look at the way the xenophobic attacks in South Africa got the global attention. But our tourism potentials really don't have that global attention. Didier, what do you think we should do? Who should we push this question to? It's a very robust conversation.
Before our panelists could answer this question, everywhere I go to Africa, I get this kind of negative comments, but I ask them also one question. We sit in a situation where a specific destination is sold. I will mention it. You all know the destination very well. Bombs, missiles, machine guns fly in any other time. But under the mention of Holy Land, this place still packages are selling as we're speaking, because it's a holy land, but there are bombs that don't stop every day, constantly, every year, every month, every week.
Doing something right.
So when it comes to Africa, no destination, first of all, no destination is perfect. We have, before the end of the year, US was counting over 300 mass shooting cases. Mass shooting. Somebody comes in public, wherever they get their guns, only God knows, shoot. Nightclubs, schools, streets, whichever place it is. But still, they don't insist on the danger of what is happening there. They still, after this, all you see is a heavily armed man looking himself like a bomb that could explode anytime to send the message that we have the situation under control. But come a small issue in Africa, our government, African government, needs to invest in fighting against the negative media. That is what I would say. Over to you, Mr. Avind, before we can go back to Mr. Septi and then move across to the panel. Just in 1 minute, if you can tell us why such negativity? What can Africa do about it?
I think this is a big challenge, which addresses all of us actually. And point is, point is the press is totally irresponsible. And point is, with the press being totally irresponsible, that doesn't give us a true image of the African continent. And I think it is part of our mission also, actually, to try to, I'm not telling you to control the press, and try to leverage on international press. And because right now, as you are aware, with social media nowadays, everything goes viral within minutes. And this is a major challenge that Africa should address.
Thank you so much. Mr. Septi, what do you say about this? We know how viral the xenophobic attack happened. Myself, I was in West Africa. I was even on the radio in Ghana. I was tired of explaining, that this is a very small portion, not even a province, very small locality, districts, and it's few people. It's not, I got tired of explaining that this is not the matter of the whole country. What do we do about this? Are we not investing enough into media to fight against such?
And I mean, the sad story, just starting with where we were, Didier, is that even as that was happening, no one was telling the story of those from both sides who were reaching out to one another and trying to say, we got to stop this, we got to resolve it. You know, all the positive stuff that was happening, nobody was interested. I've heard it, you know, from when I was young. Bad news sells. And I, you know, quite frankly, I'm not in the media, so I don't know what I can, you know, do to the media. But again, I think that what we as industry, because I think we really need to bring this conversation back to us as industry, because we are not powerless. We can't just sit and throw our hands in the air and say, well, this is the end, the sky is going to fall. I think that if the media is not going to do it for us, what we need to do as the tourism industry across the continent is to say, how do we join hands to change the narrative against the, you know, against the continent?
Yep.
The problem we have now is that each country is marketing itself. And I think this is so myopic and short-sighted. We have challenges that are continental in nature, and we cannot deal with those challenges by each country projecting itself alone. So I think for me, you know, I mean, there's somebody who's been saying we need to come up with some takeaways here. I think that continental bodies like the African Tourism Board should take the lead in pulling different countries and tourism boards together and saying, people, what are we going to do on the issue of visas? You know, and it can't be each country dealing with it alone. You know, we have continental bodies here which should be leading us. What are we going to do as industry pressurizing our governments continentally on the issue of visas? What are we going to do as industry across the continent to change the narrative about Africa? Because we're not powerless to change these things. But if we are going to continually look at government, look at the media, and we in industry are the ones who are suffering, well, my friends, we'll be having this conversation 10 years from now, I promise you.
Definitely, we don't want that to happen.
Thank you so much. You know what? I would like to go to Mr. Sam. Why? Because he's representing a country known and almost not known, especially when it comes to tourism, because of the same negative words that's going out there. Nobody knows or hears about the Virunga National Park. Africans, we know about volcanoes. How many knows you can see an erupting volcanoes in the DRC? And how many knows the biodiversity that this country has to offer? And we think that at some point also on your side, Mr. Sam, nothing is being done or not enough, let's say that, in order to promote tourism in the country and fight the negative campaign from the media. What do you have to say about this?
Thank you, DJ, for that. You know, just to complete my colleagues, panelists said what I was saying. The main issue here, what do you expect when the media sector is controlled by people not from Africa? I'm saying it with a lot of reserve, but what I'm saying, you cannot allow people to tell you about your story. So that we start, first of all, with our own narrative, as I was saying, and then that will enforce the media to be contradicted by the realities that we are facing. My call here is that the whole industry of tourism needs to call up for a business entrepreneurship where people from the land will themselves control and dictate the story of the land. That's my point of view. And the other thing is also we need, as the sector of tourism, come up with real solutions to our packaging. And that will come up from, you know, the marketing. You said that you are part of the marketing of your company. The marketing doesn't need to be only for the company. It must be for the country and for the whole continent. We need as a whole industry to face all those issues of not so that our story will not be told by others. That's my point of view.
Great, thank you so much. Let's go to the DG on this topic of negative media. What do you have to say about that?
Typing something there. Well, I agree with Mr. It will help you echo and amplify that negative
Unfortunately, the DG's connection is not good enough, and his point of view is very critical on this issue.
Belong to us. Even the WhatsApp engines don't belong. Activity, which will affect your banking, your tourism potential, affects so many things, but you are the provider of that negative story. Now, if we start to tell our own positive stories and we start to push our own positive stories out, not just on their own platforms, but creating our own platforms and energizing them with our positive stories, we can reverse this. If you want to find out about anybody here right now, where do you go? You go to a search engine. On that search engine, what do you find? It's either a positive story that person has ensured is placed there or was placed there by a responsible journalist, or else it's a negativity. And that's the same thing that countries also have to suffer from. If something happens in a little enclave in South Africa, and it is recorded on a smartphone and shot to enough people on WhatsApp and it gets viral, it will be on Nigerian news by that night that this is happening there. Now, it could just be a fracas between two individuals, but it will translate into a xenophobic impact here. Somebody has told a negative story. South Africa will suffer for it. Nigeria will react to it. How do we control that? Awareness. Telling our own story is that awareness. South Africans came to Nigeria 40 years ago with Ipitombi. Nigerians fell in love with South Africa. Nigerians never went back for that cultural exchange. Nigerians and South Africans, we don't know each other well enough. We need to. Nigerians and Kenyans, we need to. It is in those exchanges that positive stories will come out that will start to reverse this global negative that we all suffer from. I yield. I yield to you, the host.
All right, thank you very much. Didier, Mr. Hersey wants to comment. He just notified the webinar team.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hersey.
Yeah, the issue on media and Africa. Let me tell you this, no one is going to come and say good things about us. It starts with you and I, the African continent. We have to tell our story. If you expect CNN to tell a good story about us, forget it. Because it is said, good news doesn't sell. News is when a man bites a dog, not the other way around.
That's a very serious one.
So if you expect the rest of the world to talk about us, forget it, it won't happen. Where do we have hope? I can see people saying, let's start a travel channel, which is good, yes. But you know what? The easiest model today, how are we meeting right now? This is Zoom. How much is it costing us? Almost nothing. Yet we have social media. But the trouble with Africa, we are very quick to sell the negative. DG clearly said it. Somebody is taking a clip, and before you realize it, you're receiving it 20 times. Because they very quickly want to say all the negative things, because we like doing it. We've suffered from that as Kenyans. In the US, they also have terrorism. They also have people shooting. Have you ever seen a dead body being displayed by any media in America? Have you ever seen one? You don't say it. But the same media will be very quickly to display dead people in Africa because they think it's normal and because we also allowed them. I think it's high time we stopped this, and it's upon us. Looking at Wizkid in Nigeria, on his Instagram, he has 11 million followers. 11 million followers. How many African countries have 11 million people?
Wow.
If it was a republic of Wizkid, Wizkid will be probably 8th largest country in Africa. I think we need to start looking inwards. Personally, I've got close to 400,000 social media followers. It's upon us to sell what is positive about our country, not because we don't have negative things. Of course, we have problems, but we don't have to focus on that, ladies and gentlemen. In Kenya, I would like to allow me to salute our athletes. Every other weekend before the COVID, these guys run around every city where there is a race, they go there. Number 1, 2, 3 is either Kenyans or Ethiopians. And for 2 hours, if it's a marathon, it's Kenya this, Ethiopia this, Kenya this, Ethiopia that. Can you imagine the positivity we are getting out of that? Unbelievable. Those are the silent ambassadors selling the continent of Africa. And I think we need to start focusing on what works in Africa. And let me tell you, do not expect international channels to come and solve our problem. And I'd like to salute some of the channels coming out of South Africa who are portraying Africa as, as a great continent. And I believe we can do it. So let's stop looking outside. Let's start looking inside. Only then people will start taking interest, and they will stop thinking that, hey, is Africa a continent? Africa is not a continent, but Africa is a place of warm people. And if you noticed, Africa is the only continent that has got the shape of a human being. Exactly, it's the head of a man. This is where man came from. So let's be proud of our continent, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
We are the cradle of humankind, and we have to be proud of that. Thank you so much for that contribution. Mr. Akwesi, Africa as a continent is facing a serious challenge in terms of negative media. What do we do? And after this, I would want all our panelists, Captain, of course, to tell us, is Africa ready to resume travel? What should Africans look up to in terms of COVID-19? This is also a reality we cannot ignore. Should we look at the destination with a lesser number of affected or confirmed cases? Should we look at a destination where the establishment have been advertised as having all the sanitary, hygienical, and sanitized establishment? What should African travelers look up to? That's also a situation we cannot ignore. But share your view. Should Africans start traveling? Is Africa ready? That will come just after Mr. Akwesi on the media issue. And then as you speak on the media, Mr. Akwesi, you can combine the same answer as well if Africa is ready and what Africans should look up to. When can we expect Africans to start traveling? Over to you, Mr. Akwesi.
Mr. Akwesi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
So I would say we need to start moving away from competing to complementing each other. We need to love ourselves as Africans. And I think we just don't have to wait for the editorials. We always can do the editorial bit from the messages that we sent, which is free on WhatsApp, on social media. I mean, we don't have to wait and say, unless we get a good story on CNN, nobody's going to hear about it. WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook offers us opportunity to tell positive stories about Africa, and we must utilize it. It doesn't have to be about your country. Once it's about Africa, let's throw light on it. Let's show the positivity that we have to the rest of the world. And I think Africa is ready. We've shown it could not defeat us. Yes, we've had cases, but we've managed it better than anybody else. And so that is a positive story that we need to tell. As I indicated, let's start small. Let's start with domestic, and let's get people moving around. Obviously, social distancing and taking precautionary measures. But our life must go on. COVID cannot defeat us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akwesi. That is really, really awesome. And from there, we'll go to Mr. Arvind in Mauritius.
Sorry, Didier, before we move in to take our panelist remarks, I'd like to use this 30 seconds to quickly remind our distinguished panelists and also our highly esteemed participants that on the issue of media, just like Mr. Hersey mentioned, this webinar itself is an avenue for promoting African tourism. And as such, SUN International and TBS International, in partnership with NANTA, which is Nigeria National Association of Nigerian Travel Agencies, which are the co-organizers of this particular webinar, In the earlier previous webinar sessions, we decided that once we put an end to this post-COVID-19 recovery webinar series we are doing, we will resume African destination webinars. And we've actually decided to start with Mauritius. So Didier, I will need us to have a quorum with every panelist in this particular room so that we can pick on every African destination, starting with Mauritius. And we have a destination webinar. The conversation already started on WhatsApp, even before this webinar today. And somebody was dropping all the beautiful attractions we have in Angola. I never knew Angola has a moonscape tour attraction. So going forward, beginning from mid-June, I want all our panelists, distinguished panelists, well-respected participants to join us on Africa destination webinars, which we're going to be launching from middle of June, from next month. We're going to start with Mauritius, then we can go to Kenya, then we can go to Ghana, then we can pick on Nigeria, then we can look at Namibia. We have to write our own story. Just like Mr. Hesse said, Zoom itself, it's a powerful platform. As I'm talking to you right now, we are streaming live on YouTube. The audience is wonderful. So we can do this, rewrite our own story. If the mainstream media believes in bad news, we should come together and promote Africa. I want to acknowledge the presence of Alhaji Saleh Rabo. Alhaji Saleh Rabo is there in the house. He is the president of Federation of Tourism Association of Nigeria. Madam Susan, the national president of NANTA, they are here. We have all the decision makers in the house. Yes, Alhaji Rabo, thank you very much. So let us come back again. DJ, I would really appreciate. Let's have a quorum for the panelists separately. We already have a forum for the participant right now on WhatsApp. And for all of you who are listening to me, we send a notification out by email inviting you to join the WhatsApp conversation. DJ, I believe this conversation cannot stop here. So let's continue to form a forum, talk about Africa, and let's resume back for Africa destination webinars on TBS International, proudly sponsored, also proudly co-organized by Sun International and NANTA. Thank you very much, Didi. Now over to you, Didi.
Thank you so much, Captain Emmanuel. Great. That's really amazing. And of course, it is our motherland. It is our Africa. It is our land. We have to support it. Like we say in Africa, elephant doesn't get tired of his tasks. We cannot get tired of our own African continents. We cannot get tired of our motherland. We can only look at how to make it better. So having said that, on that note, yes, we will keep pushing. We will keep supporting Africa. We'll promote Destination Africa, and all the stakeholders in the house listening to us. If you have a question, we cannot answer to all the questions here, but please contact us. We know how to get hold of this panelist sitting here, and they know how to get a hold of somebody, and they know how to get a hold of somebody who will be able to say yes to what we want. Together we stand, divided we fall. Let's stand together as Africa. Your closing remarks. Is Africa ready to travel again? What should Africans look up to in terms of the COVID-19? Some are saying September, December, whichever. We don't know the indications. But myself, communicating in terms of travel to different parts of Africa, I can understand Africans are ready. They are limited because the borders are closed. Because some destination, they cannot walk. They need a flight. Africans are ready, but the decisions do not allow them. Your closing remark to Africa, and from Mr. Akwesi has put in his closing remarks. From there, we go to, I had mentioned Mr. Arvind. Is he still in the house?
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Arvind?
Mr.
Can I
Arvind,
mute your microphone?
Yes, Mr. Arvind, you have the floor.
I see Secretary Amrita is still there, but Mr. Arvind, we can't get him.
Mr. Arvind is not actually in the room right now.
Not in. Mr. Sam, your closing remark. Is Africa ready to travel? What should Africans look up to in terms of this COVID-19?
On my personal point of view, that is my personal point of view that I can say. Africa has always been ready. You know, our past weaknesses in terms of the sicknesses that we have had in terms of the malaria and things, and made us collective immunity. So yes, COVID-19 is a reality, but you can see how Africa has faced that disease stronger than anywhere in any other part of the world. So we have been always ready to welcome our visitors in a warmer way, in all the hospitality that is in Africa. We have been always ready to welcome our visitors. That's my point of view.
Thank you so much. That's really great. And Mr. Septi, over to you. Is Africa ready? What should Africans look up to before they could start traveling again and select their destinations?
Is he in the house? If he's not in the house, you
Yes,
can move to the next panel.
he's in the house. Yes,
Sorry,
there you go.
I've been trying to unmute myself. Look, I mean, I think, you know, Africans are among the most avid travelers. There's no question about that. And I think Africans are looking forward to traveling within their continent. Quite frankly, it's difficult for us sitting here to say when that's going to be. I speak from a country where the borders are still closed and we don't know for how long. But I think what we should be doing is, as destinations, we should be sweeping our house clean now in terms of all the things that we've spoken about, so that when the borders are flung open, you know, we are ready to welcome people with a variety of experiences and products, good pricing, friendliness, all these things. You know, we should really be taking this time to say, how are we readying ourselves for our friends across our borders when the time opens for them to come in? But when that time comes, we should be ready to welcome them with our arms wide open.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Septi. We'll go now to Mr. Mohamed Hersi, and the DG will be closing, make the closing remark. Over to you, Mr. Mohamed.
Firstly, thank you very much, Didier and everyone, for this beautiful webinar. It's been amazing, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And we look forward to more of this. Now, is Africa ready? Firstly, we need to put our acts together as every country. I can talk for Kenya, and I can say that we are just finalizing the new protocols that comes to COVID-19. That is the airlines, the airports, the hotels and restaurants. We are 80% there. Hopefully by next week, we should be able to have a clear way forward and share the document on how we are going to operate. And we'll be more than happy to share with the rest of Africa, so that we can all open up together, you know, and start traveling between our African countries. Now, on the issue of COVID-19, again, the same media had pointed Africa as that continent that is really going to suffer the most. But again, for some reason, touch wood, thank God, we haven't had the fatalities that were focused in. And I hope and pray it stays that way. Either it's because of our immunity, is it the food we eat, is it because we've suffered from other things in the past? I have no idea. I don't want to get too much into it. The bottom line is this: we are not dying, and God is there for us. And we will continue to practice the safety that has been pointed out. Wash your hands, sanitize, social distancing. We will do all that. But for certain, it is not happening the way the Western media had focused it. So Africa, we will be ready very soon. For Kenya, we are looking at, even by mid-June, we will like to start launching the domestic flight, and hopefully 1st of July, we should be ready to start receiving international flights. And for me, international flight is regional. I'll be more than happy to welcome you, Didier, to Kenya, and everybody else on this panel, so that we're able to show you what we all have. And my brother up in Nigeria will be more than happy to come to you, so that he can show us what Nigeria has to offer.
Definitely, I also will be seeing Kenya very soon.
Africa it's our time now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asante Sana.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And from there, we're going to Nigeria Tourism Development Corporation, DG, who is in the house to give us also his closing remarks. Mr. DG, is Africa ready to travel? What should Africans look up to when traveling? Over to you, Mr. DG.
I think, thank you very much for the closing remarks. I think I agree with Mohammed Hassi in terms of God has seen Africa suffering. This one is not our own. This one is not for us. There have been 3,700 deaths in Nigeria, sorry, in Africa. Malaria kills more people. Typhoid kills more people. And a basket of other things like reckless driving and some local habits kill more people in Africa than this disease has. Maybe God is giving us a break here and giving us a break for us to look at ourselves and look at what opportunities we can exploit. I think by the middle of the year, we should be at least be able to go within regions. And before the end of the year, I think interregional travel should be allowed. We should understand that this is what we have to do. Like with malaria, you know what you have to do. Avoid mosquito bites. With typhoid, you know what you have to do. Don't use dirty water. So this is something that is here to stay. Let's get used to it and let's start travel again. If we cannot sit at home and let COVID come and kill us, we better go out there and do something about it so that we can survive all of it.
I agree with you.
Very serious about that.
Our countries about in terms of a new medium of cultural expression that the digital revolution allows. You mentioned something about Wizkid, Davido, Tiwa Savage, these musicians, the film actresses, the pastor. They're all tourism assets.
Yep.
Now, let us start to, as government agencies or government individuals, speak to each other in a manner that travel for a South African or a Nigerian to Kenya for a religious experience is just as easy as it is for me to go to Saudi Arabia or to Jerusalem. Seamless, packaged, easy to consume at a reasonable price. Those are the things that I think we need to do to drag everybody out of the phobia of travel and into, our new life from 2020 post-COVID. I think we're getting there.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate. And as Africa, we have so much to sell and promote. The other time I was in another country and it came up, people were laughing, saying, African has got witchcraft, African has got magic, African has got this. I said to my fellow colleagues, Africans, I said to them, what I see here is the opportunity to create a witchcraft route, because it is so much believed in Europe, in America. And then some people were mentioning Nigerian movies where somebody will just disappear and things like that. And we have our African mythology that and the tales, African tales. And we grew up with such stories. We can take them to this massive tree. We know nothing happens and tell them this is where people were coming to do. It becomes a route, a destination, and it is our belief, it is our value. We still have so much to promote, so much to sell, and tell them this river you can't come on a weekend. That's why we do the tour from Monday to Friday, because if you come here, the big massive crocodile will come out and swallow you. And we have so much of this kind of stories. We are rich as a continent. Allow me to thank you once more. I will start by thanking you personally, one after another. Mr. Sam, to yourself in particular, thank you so much for the time taken out of your busy schedule. A special advisor to the Minister of Tourism in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mr. Sam Mayaka. Thank you so much. And allow me to say thank you. Amrita, if Mr. Arvind is not as disconnected, please pass away gratitude. Sincere thank you to the CEO of Mauritius Tourism Promotion Board, who took out time out of his busy schedule to be with us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate and hope to stay in contact with you. Of course, we move to East, Mr. Mohamed Hersi. I couldn't thank you enough. Your passion, your love for tourism, we just love it in Africa, and we love you. Thank you for your contribution, and we really appreciate. We'll be in touch again. And of course, Mr. Septi, wow, nobody knows the tension and the pressure I've been through. You bailed me out. Thank you so much. In a very last minute, when the Honorable CEO of South African Tourism had to honor the call by the minister. So my head ran from Cape Town to Bridge, finding a tourism authority to come.
From Cape Town to Cairo.
Yes, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And of course, Mr. Akwesi, I hope you're still in the house. Thank you so much for all your time. Ghana Tourism Authority CEO, who's always there to support and promote tourism, not only in Ghana, but within the African continent. We really appreciate the work you are doing. And to the DG of Nigeria Tourism Development Corporation, we appreciate your time, sir. You are a very busy person. For you to stay with us for all this time, it means a lot. We're really grateful.
Permit me to interrupt
allow
you.
me to finish. Yes, you will talk.
No, this is actually for the DG. This is actually for the DG.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your input. This will go a long way. It goes all over Africa. And then we have you, decision maker in terms of tourism, or influencers in terms of tourism. We believe in your capability, and we look forward to working very much together with you. Over to you. Before you say Captain Emmanuel, allow me still to thank you. My partner, Captain Emmanuel Great, all the way from Abuja, where he's sitting in Nigeria, the CEO of Tourism Business Success International. Thank you so much for making this possible. And as for me, your humble servant, son of Africa, and known by my colleague as Mr. Africa, it is me, Mr. Didier Bayeye, your African tourism expert, and also marketing manager for Africa and Indian Ocean at Sun International. Thank you so much. Captain Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Didier, Prince of Africa himself. You know, you are very instrumental to bringing this panel together, and we've been doing this since the first edition of this webinar. This is the 7th edition. House, please use your emotion button and give a round of applause to Didier Baye. He has been very powerful. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the commitment. And I'm still going to hold you responsible to bring the panelists together for me in a forum where we can have further conversations, further discussions on how to push Africa forward. Having said that, I started this webinar with an apology to the Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, Sir Olorunso Koka, who we got his attention. We reached out to him at the last minute. At the last minute, I can tell you, it may be less than 2 hours to this webinar. And he actually, I didn't know he was going to join us. So I want to appreciate you. I want to salute you, sir, for being able to join us for today, even though on this very short notice. We really appreciate you and thank you very much. And sincere apologies again for reaching out to you very late. Having said that, I want to also reach out to some distinguished members of the tourism stakeholders in the house. Alhaji Saleh Rabo is still here in the house, our national president for the Federation Tourism Association of Nigeria. I can still see some of our panelists on the house. Geraldine is still here, Didier. Geraldine is on board. Menon, Mr. Menon is still on board.
Yes.
These are people, these are people who started this webinar series.
Maybe Mr. Davidson Mugisha is still there, all the way in Kigali. We see you and greet you. And Sombo, Dibele, we see you there. We see you. Thank you for staying with us. We are from all over. We have Rwanda in the house. We have Uganda in the house. We have
It's
Kenya.
very incredible. It's
We
very
have
incredible.
even a Reunion Island. We have Mauritius. We have Egypt in the house. The CEO of Egypt.
And we also have Belize. Didier, we also have Belize in the house.
We have Belize in the house. My sister
Exactly.
Sharon and the whole team from Belize. We appreciate your presence. We thank you. We thank you, South Africa. Zimbabwe in the house. We have Cameroon. Oh, all the French country. Bonsoir, bonjour. Boa tarde, Mozambique e Angola. Cabo Verde, boa tarde. Muito obrigado. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me quickly remind the house, Didier, you are also hearing this for the first time. Next week, this webinar is a weekly webinar. We do this every Thursday. And next week, we are picking on another very important sector in the industry. And Didier is also going to moderate that session. And he's hearing this for the first time, you can imagine. We are going to be focusing on hotels, hospitality, and guest experience in the next webinar this coming Thursday. Hotels, hospitality, and guest experience. I have received so many emails from different hotel chains from Zimbabwe, from Angola, hotel and hospitality industry. We need them so much. We can never remove them from the chain. The tourism chain cannot be complete without the hospitality sector. So join us again next week, and then the following week, the next Thursday, second Thursday of the week, we will be doing the edition that we left out, focus on African airports and air traffic services. So I want to use this opportunity to inform the house that this webinar is a continuous webinar, and TBS International, we're going to continue to do this until when we know all of Africa has become a global tourism destination. And I want to appreciate you all once again for taking out time to join us. So beginning from mid-June, after the webinar on African airports and air traffic services, we will end the tenure, the series of the post-COVID-19 recovery webinars, and we will begin with the African destination webinars. So if you want to reach out to us at Tourism Business Success, reach out to us for your particular destination. We're going to gather all of Africa again to come and learn about Africa. Because I was shocked yesterday on the WhatsApp forum. I found out that there is a mosque tourist attraction in Angola. I never knew. So Africa needs to learn about African tourism destinations. And I want all of us to come together again. Let's unite Africa once again on these webinars as we start the African destination webinar. So our email address is tourismbusinesssuccess@gmail.com. You can also reach out to Didier Bayeye at dbayeye@gmail.com so that we can have your African tourism destination on the African destination webinars, proudly brought to you once again by TBS International in partnership with Sun International South Africa and the National Association of Nigerian Travel Agencies. If you also like to partner with us or you like to sponsor the next edition of the African Destination Webinar, reach out to us at TBS, reach out to DD. We will love your contributions. We love your sponsorship. We need your partnership and your collaboration. Thank you very much. And finally, once again, thank you, our panelists, for taking our time. The DG is still in the house, Didier. All our panelists are still in the house. Madam Susan, the national president of NANTA, took permission to leave us. She's not feeling fine. And I want to bring her regards to the house. Okay, she's also, NANTA has been very instrumental to the success of this webinar so far. She has been with us from the beginning, just like Didier. We want to shout out to Madam Susan at this time. So Didier, thank you very much,
so much
for bringing Africa together.
May God bless Africa. Cheers and good evening.
Good evening, all. Good evening, all. So we are not going to end this meeting. We're going to allow you to leave.
You can
before
leave.
This meeting
okay.
ends.
You can exit.
We are not going to end this webinar on you. No, we're going to give our reverence to our esteemed participant and highly distinguished panelists. So you can take your leave on the webinar before we can end this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you again next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. same time. We're going to be focusing on hotels, hospitality, and guest experience. Thank you all, and happy Africa Day. Actually, happy Africa Day. This edition of this webinar was actually, to celebrate the African Day. May is the month of Africa, and we are so happy that you have all joined us for this edition.
Big greetings to everybody in the lands of Thousand Hills.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Nice one. Didier, someone is saying thank you to you on the, you know, in
Thanks
the
to
chat
you,
room.
Africa. Thanks to all
Yeah.
of you.
Sombo says
Thank you,
he's going to
Sambo.
definitely connect with you.
Yes.
Yeah. David saying Mogisha, this is your first time of participating, but you are very happy and very grateful. Thank you very much for joining us. We like you
Davidson
from Rwanda.
Mugisha,
Wow.
we coming to the convention center for a big. When we start moving again, we coming there massively and powerfully on African tourism. So.
Wow. This webinar has actually united Africa. I'm so much loving this. Thank you all. We are waiting for you to leave the webinar. We are not going to
I'm
end
waiting
this
for you
webinar
to leave.
We are your hosts, so we are going to wait for you to
I
leave.
received you, so me, I live here. I stay here. You can go.
Thank you very much. It's going to be same time next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. We're coming on another focus on hospitality. After that, the upper Thursday, we'll be talking about African airports as we reopen our destinations, our countries. What's the expectation from our airport authorities? How is air traffic going to change? That's what we're going to be focusing on. And then don't forget, come mid-June, we're going to be starting the African destination webinars with Mauritius. So Didier, we need to quickly make sure that we get the Mauritian Tourism Promotion Authority on this to get ready, so that we can launch Africa.
The message is going across. Let's hope they will open borders soon. We are ready. Like I always say, Africans never had issues traveling, even within all this. If borders were not locked, if flights were there, people will still be flying. So people will still be traveling. We just depending on this logistics to allow us. Then we start moving again. The good thing is that this time we'll do Africa more than anything else, any other destination.
All right. I have greetings also from our YouTube participants. We have participants joining us live on YouTube. Thank you, all of you. Meet us again next week. It's going to be another wonderful edition. We'd love to have you again and again. Africa must become a global destination. When they are listing top 37 destinations in the world, they must put Africa between 1, 2, 3. That's our vision at TBS International. And we're going to need your partnership, your collaboration, your support, your participation to do this. Don't forget to also like us and share our videos, this YouTube video. Let it go viral. That is the media, actually. This live stream is actually something you can share on all social platforms. Don't forget to connect with Didier Baye on Instagram at Didier Baye. Don't forget to connect with Tourism Business Success, Tourism TBS International. We are all on social media channels. Connect with us, like, share. Let us tell the story of Africa by Africans. Let us rewrite the story. Didier is very much always on Instagram and always on Facebook. He's a sensation. So tell him those stories. Let's share the stories. Let's say something different about Nigeria and about Africa and about South Africa and about all of Africa. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Captain. Thank you for making it happen. You've done well. Thanks to the whole team, especially the team on the background. We sometimes forget to mention them, but thank you so much for making it great success. You know, talking and monitoring all the messages is not easy, but it's because of them that we can actually manage and do this. So thank you so much, guys. We appreciate what you do. We are doing just fine as Africa, and if only Africa can step up now, we can actually catch up with our tourism share before the end of this year. And that is what we want to do as a continent. Thank you so much, and God bless Africa. Nkosi Sigelele Africa.
Nice one. Cleopatra Goanedzon. I don't know if I can get that right. It must be a French name. Thank you very much for reaching out. It says, my name is Cleopatra, wonderful webinar with very important knowledge share. Greetings from Republic of Benin. Thank you, Benin, for being with us. Thank you. You know,
Thank
DJ,
you.
we actually have one hand Gajira, raising up our hand, but time was actually, not our
Okay,
friend.
people are
Yeah.
exiting. If you can, fine. While we're waiting for everyone to leave, it's okay.
Okay, let me see if her hand is still up in the room, if she has not left. She was raising up her hand. Okay, she's not in the room anymore. She was raising up her hand, but time was not on our side. And, we can't actually we have more than 355 questions for this webinar. Can you imagine, Didier?
Yeah,
355
I
questions.
told you it's gonna be big. It's gonna be not like any other, to have the whole Africa come together. Yes,
It's a very big one. It's
it
very
is.
wonderful. So Didier, can we end the meeting now? Looks like we still have some people in the house. What do you think?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Captain. Have a good evening. And then I see Sombo is still there.
Yeah, Sombo, yes, this webinar is live and you can always replay it over and over again. I want to actually let us
Sombo,
share
we can keep in
this.
touch. You can ask your questions. Yes, it's fine. So we can answer all your questions.
And please join the WhatsApp conversation. Let's continue this conversation on WhatsApp.
Somebody saying continue with the discussion. They want us to continue.
Oh, they want us to continue.
They want us to continue. Wow.
Wow, we still have 20 participants.
We still have 20 people in the house. They don't want to leave.
They don't want us to leave. So Didier, what do we do?
Captain Emmanuel, are we let's be courteous, okay? And give maybe 10 minutes to answer questions. Guys, send your questions. Just type, it's coming straight on the screen. We can just read them and try to give a brief answer quickly. Just, yes, let's go.
So let's have your questions. Oh, someone says, can we send a WhatsApp link to them? So let's see if I can do that.
WhatsApp link?
Yes.
They can. You can add them. Maybe they should put their number here. You put them on the WhatsApp.
Oh yes. Please kindly drop your WhatsApp contacts
where
so that
people
we can
are
actually have them.
coming. Yes, yeah, and all the numbers are there. The story of the media is that we need to believe and stand for our own story. There's a number there, Captain, from Toluwalope Ola.
Toluwalope Ola. Toluwalope Ola is actually one of our TBS Success family member.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Didier. Let me quickly tell you this, Didier. Didier, very soon I'll be bringing you on. We have a private training, a course, post-COVID-19 recovery course for tourism businesses. And we have participants. We've done this all of May. I don't know if next week we can have you maybe just for 30 minutes or 15 minutes on our training so that we can.
If you tell me on time, we'll be able to arrange that. There's more messages, Captain. Somebody is a +44 that looks like UK. How do we get a replay if we want to listen to the whole conversation again? Okay, that's very easy. You can get it. Somebody, I'm from the DRC.
Definitely.
And it's difficult to connect between our fellow African. Why is it difficult? What is the Sombo, pourquoi c'est difficile de connecter entre l'Afrique ou avec les Africains? No, it's not difficult. It's not difficult. It's easy, very easy. Yeah. Okay. Captain will share the link.
Yes. The
there
link
is
to join the WhatsApp conversation is there. No, this is the link for the WhatsApp conversation. I'm going to drop the link for the webinar. I'll drop that now.
For the webinar, yes.
Yeah, we are still live on YouTube actually. So I'm going to give them the link now.
Okay.
Actually, you have not participated in this webinar until you go back and watch and listen over and over again.
Definitely, yes.
Yes. So the link is coming up now. The link is coming up now.
All right. Any
Voila.
other question?
That's the link.
That
So
is
you
the
can
link.
use the link.
Watch
Yes.
the
Use the
replay.
link and go and watch a replay of the webinar. Powerful webinar session celebrating Africa on Africa Day.
Yes.
All right, Sumbo, you got the link. You have to leave now. Yes, we are waiting for you to leave. Thank you very much for staying up till now.
Okay, but we still have 17 people. Who are these people? They're not going.
They refuse to go. They don't want us to go. That means Africa loves you, did it? Africa loves
Eunice, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being there. Who else is in the house?
We have Caroline Gura, Celestine Ojeri.
Caroline Guerra.
Yeah,
Boa
Caroline
noite,
Guerra.
senora. She's all the way from Angola.
Wow, Caroline.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you very much. Thank you very much for connecting. Join us on the WhatsApp conversation. The link is there on the platform already. Let's continue this conversation on WhatsApp. Africa is blessed. And
We
let's
have
learn about
Diana
Shitaka.
Eunice. And we have
Mary Waginda.
Let me
is
read
in the
easy
house.
part. Mbutia. Lauren Newman.
Apologies for
Malise,
pronunciation.
hi, in Mauritius.
Wow.
Mikhail
and Sa.
Thank you. Yes, that's my very good buddy. That's the SAA cabin crew chief. Celebrity,
wow, nice
by
one.
the way.
Nice one.
Eri Wanginda, good evening. Thanks for joining.
Eunice Obobu, Women in Business and Tourism, Ghana. Thank you very much for joining.
Kubeka
She's reaching out to you, Didier.
Thanks for joining. Tolu, Ola. Yes, all of you. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, you were saying?
Yeah, Eunice Obobu is saying hi to
Women in Business and Tourism. Hey, yes. I greet you too. Keep well and stay safe until we meet again. All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you. Oh, now I think it's a good
really
time to
appreciate
the webinar.
Answer. Which one is your profile? You mean on WhatsApp? You said I should check your profile, right? You sent me some picture. Okay, all right. I will look at it. I'll look at my message when I log out. Thank you so much. I know you used to always surprise me with pictures. You know, those pictures you took in Senegal when we were doing the 100 years for Madiba, I still have them and they still so good.
Did you tell Answer to also share us those pictures in the WhatsApp conversation?
I need to look at them first.
Okay, no problem. Maybe you can share them once or two.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, he said he shot on Zoom. Oh, wow. Okay. You guys, I just love you. You're amazing. Thanks, Answer.
This is so wonderful.
I will share with you, Captain.
Yeah. All right, no problem. So, Didi, I think it's a very good time to end this now.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, all of Africa, for being here today.
Yep. Thanks, and see you next week.
See you next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. as usual.